Welcome everybody to the next episode of Chiefs Focus First and 10 Live. You are here with JP and Quinn. How are you guys doing tonight?
What's up, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Don't this camera silliness already, but it's going pretty good. You doing all right, Quentin?
Well, I know JP has at least sounded better in his life.
That is true.
This has been a rough ride, man. It'll go away at some point in my life.
Oh, for sure, man. It'll all work out soon for you. Knowing what colds and things I've had to deal with the last couple of weeks, it will be gone pretty soon.
Yeah.
But a lot has happened in the kingdom. A lot has happened. We see the compensatory picks upcoming. Quentin, what have you noticed with the compensatory picks? Which ones do the Chiefs have, and how many do they have kind of moving forward?
Yeah, so they got 3 picks given to them. The one, to my understanding, one of the picks is the one that they're sending over to the Giants for the Kadarius Toney trade. So while they received 3 from the NFL, the Chiefs are only going to get 2. They're sending their best one, which is the 100th overall. That one is going to the Giants. And then they got 217 and 250 also. So just some later round picks. We knew that these were coming, right? There was a pretty good guess that these were coming to Kansas City. So there's no surprise there. It's just more ammunition for the Chiefs to have. And like I said, I think there's a good chance that these picks get packaged anyways to move up. So no big shock there, but, good to see that they're official.
So what does that give us now? Does that give us 11 exactly?
11, yeah.
Yep, 11 picks.
I knew we were going to end up with 11. I just didn't know. We almost ended up with 12, but we got screwed out of one. I'll put it that way. I'm going to leave it at that at this point. The NFL decided to change the rules at the last moment just for us, I guess. But regardless, it is what it is. I'm kind of happy we got what we... Look, man, how many Super Bowl teams have you ever seen? I mean, I'm old, so I don't think I've ever seen it. Back-to-back years have 10 and 11 draft picks.
They mostly trade those away. I mean, you see teams like the Eagles the other year went all in. The Rams went all in. They don't really have a lot of picks.
No.
So it is kind of crazy to see that. I will say this. You guys may have noticed this, but like the 49ers who gave a lot of their draft picks away to get a guy like a McCaffrey, they have like 4 or 5 like really good compensatory picks. So if you can do it right, and if you can get things working for you, specifically off the Rooney Rule and things like that, you're in a prime position. I mean, they have like 3 or 4 day 2, day 3 picks that are really good. But regardless, I mean, when you look at the end of the day, the Chiefs have picks ready to go, and I have a feeling they're going to be trying to trade into the beginning of these rounds, try to get some elite talent. What do you guys think about that, possibly?
I absolutely agree. I think they're going to really. I think Veach has something up his sleeve. I really do. Really quick, we were asked again to do a presser with Mike Tannenbaum today, and it was really nice to do. Even with my terrible voice, I was able to do it. And they brought up some really cool points about certain players in the draft. One of them, the Anthony Richardson is become like. I mean, dude, this guy is like solid gold in the draft right now. I mean, it's crazy how much everybody's talking about this guy. It's pretty insane. I mean, I think there was probably 12 of us out of the 50 people that got to actually speak during this and ask questions. At least 8 of them were about this guy. And I was like, wow. I mean, there's so many other players that you can potentially talk about. That's all they talked about was him. I was blown out of the water. They did bring up Orlando. I brought up Orlando Brown, and I asked about the situation with him, and they did allude to the fact that the Chiefs are trying to work something out with him before Monday. But the one thing they did say is that regardless of what, and I brought up Lamar Jackson as well, and I said, with all this talk about all these teams stating that they don't want Lamar Jackson, nobody's even interested in him. You're seeing it all over social media, these media guys saying that, the team's reporting that they're not interested, not going to be interested in Lamar Jackson. What do you think about that? And they said, well, it's kind of early to even speculate. And I said, is it smoke and mirrors then? And they said, basically, yes. Because, they can potentially trade after the draft. They can do a lot of different things for Lamar. It doesn't have to be right this minute. So I thought it was kind of cool the fact that what we heard is what they're hearing, the same thing they're hearing. One, they are trying to work out a deal with Orlando Brown, and they are going to be, from what I was told today, they are going to be looking for a left guard, and it looks like they are trying to re-sign Wiley. So, from what Mike and Rich both heard, that's what they plan on doing.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I don't think you're trying to replace both your tackles in the same offseason. When you don't want to make too many changes. This team, during the Brett Veach era, it seems like that they're always drafting for the next year, and they use free agency and the trades to sort of fill up some of those immediate holes. Take advantage of the guys that become available, and on to you. There's not a lot of guys that, I guess you could talk about this year with some of the defensive backs, but for a lot of those end guys in the draft, they end up becoming partially contributors and not necessarily full starters. Most of the guys that are on this team, they were drafted in the early rounds. Obviously, there are exceptions to that, like the defensive backs this year, but that seems to be the way the Chiefs have been handling the draft with Brett Veach here. Rounds 1 through 3 are guys that contribute now, and then the back end, they become special teams or partial players. And I think that's, in a perfect world, that's the way you want to build your team. And when you've hit 20 out of your last 22 draft picks, you have the freedom to be able to build a team like that. And I think that's what's made this team so successful, is their ability to draft guys and not feel pressured into going into free agency, feeling like they have to go get one position and they have to sign this one guy to a huge contract that you end up regretting later. We're in that time right now where there are tons of teams that are releasing veteran players because they can no longer afford their contracts anymore. And we'll get into some of the Vikings players later here in a minute, but Kansas City isn't a part of that group that's just going through and releasing guys because they are regretting their contracts. So you just have to be able to not make mistakes, because one mistake can really derail your franchise.
And that's very important to see, because when you look as a whole, Brett Veach and Quentin just said 20 out of 22 draft picks are still on this team. That's phenomenal. We see a lot of teams that struggle with that. And then number 2, the financial situation. The Chiefs have not been in a bad financial situation since Brett Veach has taken over. He's cut guys at the right time. He's had a very good, very team-friendly contract. And as a whole, that has really, really helped the team in many different assets. So I think, kind of looking forward with these comp picks and also just other picks as a whole, the Chiefs can be in a great position. They could either move up, they can move back. They could do last year where they end up trading up and they end up able to get McDuffie, but they also had another first-round pick to get Karlaftis. A lot of different things can happen there. So I'm very, very happy. Plus, the drafts in Kansas City is going to be a great, great time. Fun fact, though, did you guys know that compensatory picks could not be traded at one point? Did you guys know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird that
Yes.
there are some of these arbitrary rules that used to be in place. Like, it's funny, on the other side, in baseball, the only picks that can be traded are compensatory picks. So
Yeah.
it's so weird how there's some of these
weird.
like niche rules that either are in place or have been in place. And I think that, the fact that you can trade those picks now, I think it's better for the NFL. Just the more flexibility teams have, the better you can build your teams, or at least the more options you have. So, yeah, a weird rule, and I'm happy that that's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. It just makes it easier. Go ahead, JP.
I absolutely agree. Philip sent me a text just now. And Philip is our guru when it comes to breaking down the draft and different teams that could possibly be a trade partner down the line. Seattle, he's right. Seattle is a really good trade partner right now, especially with the draft picks that we got going on. They're in line with the wheelhouse of what we need.
They have a couple top 10 picks, I think, or at least 2 top 20 picks, and I think one's definitely in the top 10 from the Broncos deal. So that could definitely work.
Yeah, they've got the number 5 pick from Denver.
Yeah, they got 1 through 20. They got Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones. That's those are 2 great players. 2 through 63, they got Jordan Battle. I know Philip loves Jordan Battle, and who wouldn't? Kid's good. Then you got 4 through 133, Deuce Vaughn. The only thing I would say about Vaughn, I mean, people are complaining about his size, his height, I guess, more than anything. I don't see how that could be a disadvantage in his position.
He is fast. He
Man,
can
he's
blow
fast.
by guys.
Yeah,
I
he's
know
screaming
people
fast.
probably have the scare with CH, but I watched CH play in college and saw Deuce Vaughn, and Deuce Vaughn is just a lot more explosive.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah,
more
he's-
explosive, can run between the tackles, great pass catching block. I think at the end of the day, it really can help this team if they can bring in like a Deuce Vaughn or a Deuce Vaughn like player. That's just very, very good and can play in that kind of pro style offense system that he had played under in Kansas State. Because we saw with CH, he kind of played in that more of the spread with Jamar Chase, Terrence Marshall, Justin Jefferson, Clyde in the back. Clyde was in the backfield. It was more spread out. Kind of what we see with Deuce, he's playing in that more of the pro style. And Mahomes and slinging and stuff, but we can see if they need to, they can hand the ball off. So I think that can help.
I think one
agree.
thing that was sort of underrated about the Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing back at LSU is that, he was in an offense that Clyde wasn't the main guy. He was sort of like the extra cherry on top. And he took advantage of the fact that, he was on this team that had an elite quarterback and elite skill receivers. So when you're facing LSU at that time, you weren't playing against the run game. You were so worried about the pass. So I think that, Clyde was able to take advantage of a lot of light boxes back in college. Deuce Vaughn, on the other hand, is in an offense where Deuce Vaughn's the guy. They have quarterback and they have, offense. You don't win the Big 12, with just a running back. But the fact that he's been the guy and teams have tried to stop him and a lot of teams failed at that, I think shows his skill set. And that's why I think he should just be a better prospect from the beginning. He's real good in the passing game. And I know that, obviously I think there's a bias in the Kansas City area because he went to K-State, so you get to see him a lot more in terms of actually seeing him. But it's a perfect fit for this offense, especially because Deuce Vaughn doesn't have to be the guy anymore because you have Pacheco. And I will also say that Deuce Vaughn is more developed in the receiving game as well.
Well, and you also, when you look at LSU, they had a generational offensive line that, when Clyde was there, it made it a little bit easier for him. And he didn't have, I'm not saying that our offensive line is horrible by any means because they're not. But the system was different, and that offensive line, especially a college offensive line that was that good, created so many gaps and holes for him that it made him look so much more talented than he may be. When you transition to the NFL, it's so much different. The speed's different. You've got to be able to hit the gaps correctly within a split second. You've got to time those gaps exactly right. And Clyde there's times that he's been able to do it, and then there's times that he falls flat and he's got his head up a lineman's butt because he doesn't run, he doesn't hit the gap correctly. So I think the difference between a Deuce Vaughn, a Pacheco, and they even brought that up during today's presser that we were on, Pacheco, how Veach was able to find a guy like Pacheco that is, absolutely a phenomenal player that really no one, he was no one ever thought he would be that guy. 7th round pick. No one even considered him. And then he comes out and becomes who he becomes because he really picked up the game. After those first 6 or 7 games, he was able to pick it up quickly and learn how to time his gaps, time his runs, find the holes, let his blockers lead and do what he needed to do. That's something I see Deuce Vaughn is able to do, and he doesn't have a generational offensive line. When you really think about it.
Mm-hmm. And kind of looking at kind of Phillips' comment, not the one on the screen, get back to that second, but he says Deuce Vaughn would be DAT for anyone who knows who that is or doesn't. That's DeAnthony Thomas, star running back out of Oregon, was with the Chiefs for a couple years, and then also Dexter McCluster, another star running back / wide receiver. Both guys are really, really good. injuries kind of hurt their career. But I kind of agree with Philip. If he could be a mold of some of those players, but a little bit more durability, he could be very, very special with that speed and with that shiftiness. Because I remember seeing D'Anthony Thomas first time it was a preseason game against the Bengals, and he ended up running the punt all the way back for a touchdown. Same thing with Dux McCluster is going to happen many years prior against the Giants. So there's a lot that can happen there. And last point on there with Deuce Vaughn. When I saw him get that 65-yard touchdown run against Alabama, I was like, yeah, he is certified. He can really play. I don't know if you guys watched that bowl game. K-State got destroyed, but Deuce Vaughn showed up. And I really believe with having him in the right system is going to help.
I think he would fit in a system where, he doesn't have to take all of the abuse of being an NFL running back. I think he would fit in a system where he's part of that rotational piece. Because one, that's just where the NFL is going. Unless you have a Saquon Barkley or one of these top running backs, you need to have a running back by committee, and I think he would fit perfectly in that system. I do think that his pass blocking, that needs to be something we need to see in the NFL. It's much easier to pass block guys from the Big 12 rather than guys in the NFL. So we'll see where that comes from. Honestly, I think that's what's going to, if he gets picked by Kansas City, in training camp, and we'll just have to see how he does it with that, because his pass blocking is going to be something where you just aren't quite sure how well he's going to do it against guys that he hasn't faced before since he was in the Big 12.
Hey, Will, we're going to get to that really quick. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to get to that because we were going to talk about that. I didn't want to leave you hanging there. Hey, there's Brad. What's up, Brad? I didn't see you in there, man. I'm surprised you're up. I know it's that time of the night when you're usually asleep. You had your dinner at 4 and you go to bed at 7, Grandpa. Anyway.
I don't know if you have a lot of room to talk, JP.
Hey, shut your mouth. I stay up later than he does.
Oh, man, you guys.
Got to have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
Philip said Jordan Battle picked off Vaughn, lined up like a dirty town LB in that game. He did.
That's fine. He'll get his payback. Don't worry. He'll get him if he'll run to him again. Don't worry.
Brad said got jokes. Well, got to have some
like
jokes
the
in this
Got
place.
Milk Productions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That is true. But we as we kind of look at the draft, let's kind of center on kind of see what's going on with all these cuts. So you see with the Minnesota Vikings, it appears they're going to cut 2 of their star players: wide receiver Adam Thielen and then linebacker
Zadarius Smith.
Thank you.
I got you.
Zadarius Smith. Appreciate it. Let's go and start with Thielen. How do we feel about that? Do we think the Chiefs should try to bring him in? What are you guys' overall thoughts about possibly adding Adam Thielen to the Chiefs in our wide receiving core, just having another veteran presence?
You want to go with that one first, or you want me to, Quentin?
I can take the leap here. So first of all, I don't know if this needs to go into our segment we created yesterday, but the what were they thinking? So Matt Verdun had a tweet, and he says, "My understanding is that should Thielen be released by the Vikings, his priority will be playing on a contender with a top-tier quarterback." And in that same tweet, he said, "I was told Indianapolis is a likelihood." Those two things do not match up.
Wait a minute. Who said this?
At Matt Verdun.
Matt
Verderam.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, Vanderdam, yeah.
Yeah, so that tweet, that's a contradictory tweet right there. You can't say you're going to a contender with a top-tier quarterback and also say Indianapolis in the same sentence. But let's move back to Kansas City real quick.
What was he thinking?
Yeah, so hypothetically, I'm okay with Thielen coming in because you're going to need to bring some guys into this room. We don't know what's happened with Mecole Hardman. We don't know what's happened with Watson. The back end of the roster, the depth chart for the wide receiver is kind of open. He would come in, he would be the 4th wide receiver option on this team. Anything higher than that, I just don't know if you can really expect him to do more. He's getting older. He's had some knee injuries in the past. He's missed some time. So if you want to bring him in and he becomes your 4th wide receiver and maybe jumps up to that 3 spot when one of your other wide receivers goes down, like what happened in the championship game, and you just need a guy to step up, I'm okay with that. If he's wherever he goes, this isn't even just a Kansas City thing. Wherever he goes, he's going to pick up a mostly incentive-based contract, which is what Kansas City is going to want I would say that's what it is. Anything outside of that, I just don't know what he brings to this team with any more money.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't know that he is able to bring a whole lot more than what we already have, other than, I mean, like you said, unless it's extremely cheap, and he's a fill-in, a fourth string wide receiver that maybe is an insurance policy to a degree. I don't know what he could bring to us. I just don't see the upside to it. I just don't, but that's my opinion.
I still feel like there is something there. Now, granted, there's been injuries like Quentin said, but I think if you bring him in that limited role, like that third or fourth wide receiver, see what he can do for certain situations, I think he still has some stuff there. Now, here's the age-old question, and we'll get to it with the Darius Smith. Do you want a ring or you don't want money? Because a team like the Raiders or the Bears might throw the bag at you. But do you want to go to the Chiefs or would you rather go to the 49ers and then possibly want to get a ring? So that's kind of age-old question here. I do believe that the Chiefs bring him, he could be very beneficial and could help. But then again, could the Chiefs find a possible replacement? Because I've been doing with my draft research with Keenan and Phillip and all the other guys, and I found some wide receivers that have good route running and are basically bullies on the field, pushing people over, that you could bring in for a cheaper amount. So it kind of goes in this. Do you want that veteran experience and you're going to pay a little premium dollar, or do you want to make it to where that your rookies are coming in have to come in? Because we saw what happened with Sky Moore in the Super Bowl. That's not going to happen with every single rookie. That's just not going to happen. It takes time for those things to happen there.
Yeah, I just think wherever he goes, especially if he wants to go on a contender, most contenders have pretty tight cap situations. I just think that he needs to realize that he's no longer that guy. He's no longer a number one wide receiver. And if he wants to extend his career for as long as he can, not being the number one or number two guy on an offense is where he needs to go. Coming in and making a couple $1 million over the next, honestly, 3 years left of his NFL career is probably his best bet. And I would be upset if Thielen comes here, but I just think that the expectations need to be pretty low. And if he walks away with 350 yards and a touchdown, I don't think Chiefs fans should be upset by that, just because I don't have any expectations for his production.
And honestly,
yeah.
When I agree with you, and when I look at all the wide receivers that everybody's talked about within the kingdom, when you talk about D-Hop and everybody else that the Chiefs want, or the Chiefs fans want, I should say, he would be almost, as much as I don't see the upside to it, he would be a guy that Veach would bring in over a D-Hop, simply because he's going to bring some value at a very minimal cost, and you don't have to worry about the ego. And I think that's a lot of where that may fall into place if the Chiefs are interested in him. One thing I will tell you about Veach, and we've said it a million times, any player that's available, Veach is going to ask about him. Just ask A.J. Brown.
It's good to just inquire and see kind of what's there.
Yeah, all you got to do is ask A.J. I mean, if you ask A.J., though, we tried to sign him. We offered him a multi-million-dollar deal, and, we were going to sign him over everybody, but we know that's not true. Veach just inquires about everybody, and that's what a smart GM does. It just is what it is. Brad thinks that he's a good candidate for the Patriots. He might be. I mean, if he's looking for a Super Bowl win in the next 3 years, he's got an outside chance, or a Super Bowl appearance, I should say. There's an outside chance he'd get that in a 3-year span, but it's a pretty far outside chance right now with what they're dealing with there.
So we're kind of split, yes, no. If we do get, it's like 350 and a touchdown. That's kind of how
I'm
we're
not going to complain. I mean, but I
that's fair.
It's not like something I would, jump
still,
up and down if we did.
I still feel like there's something there that could be worked out, and Andy Reid, he can unlock that all the potential there. All right, moving on to Zadarius Smith. We see he wants to be cut. The Vikings are like, nah, we don't want to do that. And we're kind of stalemate. What do we think is going to happen? Go ahead and start off with JP.
Look, man, when a player wants to be cut and a team doesn't want to cut you, unless you're the Steelers and you're Mike Tomlin that actually has respect for a player, honestly, he may just sit out. If he doesn't want to be there, he's not gonna play. And if he sits out, he sits out. If they try to, if they finally make a decision and say, okay, we'll try to trade you off, but we're not, knowing them, they're going to say, well, we want a, 2 seconds or a first and a second or a second and a third, trying to get, all the dollars out of him. Not too many. I don't think there's going to be that many bidders out there for him, for high numbers anyway, for high draft capital, I should say.
I don't think anyone's going to trade for that contract.
No, the contract's insane. And they would have to eat 50% of it just to even have a team consider it. So the only option left would be to either cut him and, whatever their dead cap space is, that's what it'll be, which would probably be a lot of money, or he sits out. I feel like that's might be where he ends up, is sitting out. What do you think, Quentin?
Yeah, I don't know. It was Mike Tomlin that said that they want volunteers, not prisoners.
That's
So
right.
if you make enough stink, maybe you can get out of the Vikings. In terms of the Chiefs getting him, maybe he's a guy that you can bring in like a Terrell Suggs type deal, where once again the expectation is so low, and it becomes a very limited because he's older. I want to say he's like 36, so he's an older player, but the expectation there would be limited. Look, these are not guys that you bring in to be franchise-changing guys. These guys are the kinds of just, around the edges, just to make sure that your team is fully ready to go. Look, Brett Veach has brought in guys like Smith before. Example is Terrell Suggs, but even like Dunlap, right? Older pass rushers that are just used as rotational pieces. So there are plenty of guys that are going to become available because they're going to be cap cuts. That happens every year. So that is something that I expect Brett Veach to bring in, whether it's Smith, if he eventually gets cut, or if it's somebody else that gets cut by another team. The Chiefs are going to add veteran pass rush to this team before we go into training camp.
Yeah,
And the one thing that's interesting is we saw kind of that situation. I think he originally was going to sign with the Ravens. That deal fell through, and he ends up going to the Vikings. So I don't know what's going to happen. They're kind of at a stalemate where he doesn't want to be there, but they want to keep him. Ultimately, we see players day by day have more power than what they had in the past, so I think there's a good chance he gets cut. If the Chiefs bring him in, it all comes down to money because he just chased that deal. So I really don't know. Do you guys think it's possible the Chiefs could bring him in, kind of similar we saw in the Carlos Dunlap situation, or do you think that it's a no-go?
Dunlap?
Smith, Zadarius Smith.
I mean, I would probably give it 10%, a 10% shot. I mean, I wouldn't go much more than that. The one thing I will say is that Veach is kind of notorious for bringing in guys that still have a lot of juice left in their later years of their career on one-year deals. If he comes in on a cheap deal, maybe. But I just would have to. What's up, percent? I would give it like a 10%er right now. I would almost say you're probably going to see a Dunlap back before you see that happen.
I agree with you there. I think it's very possible. He has a lot left in the tank. I think they will bring him back. Now, it'll depend on the numbers because he kind of proved himself. But what will that extension be will be very interesting.
Yeah. I think if it came down to it, I mean, that money, I don't know. To me, I think it would just it wouldn't benefit us at this point, cap wise or for any other reason. It just wouldn't benefit us. There's too many other players out there that we can bring. I mean, if that was the case, we'd have kept Frank Clark. We would have been able to work a deal out with him. So why would we bring somebody else in that's 36 years old, or 30? I think he's 35 or 36 years old, and end up being in cap hell? It just wouldn't make sense for us to do that.
The fact that they had to let Frank Clark go, to me, means that there's a better chance that they keep Carlos Dunlap around, just because, like I said before, I don't think that the Chiefs want to make too many changes in a single offseason if you can avoid it. And to bring back a guy on another 1-year deal would make sense for Dunlap. And I think that if Carlos Dunlap wants to be back in Kansas City, I think the Chiefs can work it out. But yeah, I just don't see a guy like Smith coming here to Kansas City just because there are going to be a ton of guys that are getting cut or free agents that Kansas City is going to be able to bring in.
Yeah, we got that period, we got the draft, and here's another area a lot of people don't realize. That area after the draft, we see a lot of them cut down to 53. A lot of the Chiefs guys, they find some of their prominent players through that system.
Yes.
So we got like basically 3 rounds of the offseason kind of right there where they could eventually find someone. And we could see a veteran on a team like the Titans, and the guy gets cut, and the Chiefs bring him in. The next thing you know, he's doing great. So I think there can a lot of things that can happen there. What does Brad say? Brad says, but Sky Moore is going to be special. I think he gets it all put together. Is going to be our Julian Edelman. Hey, I think he could be better than Julian Edelman.
I do too.
It's going to take some time.
Dwayne Bowe's better than Julian Edelman.
Huh?
Dwayne Bowe's better than Julian Edelman.
Hey,
hell yeah, he
hey,
was.
I will say this: the ball did hit Edelman's fingers. I think we can all agree with that. The ball hit his thumbs. As Quentin takes a sip, it did hit his hand, so there was a fumble.
Yeah. Well, look, man. Say what you want. Dwayne Bowe was a beast. If he had, look, man, I'm gonna go off topic here just real quick. If he was in this system right now with Patrick Mahomes, oh my God, what he would have done in this system with Patrick Mahomes, because he was an animal. He just didn't have the quarterback. I'm just telling you, the guy was very good, way better football player than he is a rapper.
Yeah, he does still rap. That is true. He does still rap.
Hey, man, he signed with 50 Cent, so he must be doing something right.
Yeah,
But, you know, no offense to Bo, but, yeah, I think Bo was a great player. But anyway, regardless, moving on. We got a bunch of chat stuff going on here, so let's see what everybody's saying here. Reset says all Mahomes needs is a good protection. He's got good protection. I mean, the guy got sacked 26 times for an entire season. He didn't get touched in the playoffs or the Super Bowl. I think if they bring back, and I'm still not 100% sold on Wiley just because he had one great game in the Super Bowl. I'm not. You got people that are on both sides of the fence when it comes to that. One guy says it's because Orlando Brown had problems that made Wiley bad. That's absolutely not true, because when Orlando had some of his best games, Wiley was still bad. Everything, you know, the old saying that crap rolls downhill, it does. And when when everybody has to shift one direction to protect because a guy gives up protection, it tells you a lot. And when we look at those numbers, not the fake ones that were put out on Twitter by some of these kids, but the real numbers, Wiley was responsible for 13 of the 26 sacks that Mahomes got, and he was responsible for almost 60% of the pressures that Mahomes had on him during the regular season. That's why he was paid $2 million a year. And
I would say Bell's advocate, though, JP, he did step out the biggest game of the year against a really good defensive line.
I'm not going to take that away from him.
Mm-hmm.
But
hey, even a blind squirrel can find a nut, you know?
That's right.
God, come on now. Guys, he stepped up in the biggest game of the year.
Hey, congratulations. Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
But my point...
Okay, I guess you really want to see a repeat against the Buccaneers then, the way you're acting, Quentin.
No, I'm just saying that I think that Wiley's going to be back on this team because
I
think Brown is gone. And, technically they have until Monday, but
they do.
Before the tampering period starts, the legal tampering period starts. But I don't know. I just feel like when you put I know that deadlines make deals, but the fact that they didn't throw the franchise tag on him makes me feel like, they just sort of threw their hands up in the air and says that we're not going to be able to deal with them with this guy, so why waste our time?
It could be very frustrating. I would not be surprised. I mean, Vert Beach seems like a pretty good and easy guy to get along with, but when he's had enough, he's had enough. Reset says Lucas Niang is a big athletic guy. that might not be a bad move. I mean, we see he's dealt with injury. I say, hey, bring him in and see what he can do. Just kind of help bring him, build him into the system. I will say this: when Chase Young was playing at Ohio State, and when Ohio State went against TCU, Chase Young said that Lucas Nying was the most difficult offensive player he had to go against.
Yeah.
So I think there's something still there, but it'll be kind of time to tell to see will he be able to translate that over to the NFL. What else do we have here?
I mean, the best ability is availability, right?
That's true.
Or
Well, he came back too early, though. That was
Yeah.
part of the problem. He came back too early. He shouldn't have come back that early with that injury that he had. He should have never come back that soon.
he
and that
can't
happens. You see that a lot. So
he can't be the solution, right? He can't be
Yep.
like I've got no problem with them going into them saying, "Hey, this is our guy," or "We want a camp battle." But the Chiefs have to have a second option because the guy has showed you too many times that he's been injured,
we have
and
a second option.
you got to be able to have a second option at left tackle.
We got that second
without-
option, though.
And who?
Prince.
The Prince is a right tackle.
Yeah, but he plays left. He can play both. I
Mm.
mean, if you
Do
look
you
at his,
want though Mahomes to have him there, and a guy who
man,
hasn't had a lot of time?
I don't know,
You never
dude.
know what's
I
going to
would-
happen.
I got to tell you, that kid is so versatile, and he's a beast. He's just strong. He's got great vision, and when you're versatile like that and you can play both positions, he's like the Joe Thuney type player. He can play multiple positions and play
Joe
well.
Thuney did play left tackle one game.
Oh, stop!
He did.
No,
Quentin, it's the
Caleb,
truth. Don't
I
be a
understand.
No. Don't be a
Hater.
hater. Come on.
We got
now.
a hater.
Come on.
I'm gonna be a
Listen,
We
hater
got
on
a
this.
hater.
Okay,
I
be
mean,
a hater. Tell me your
if
point.
he
Tell me your
could
whole point.
play left tackle full time, he would have played left tackle full time. Because but
Okay.
you do not move a guy that is fully qualified to play left tackle over to left guard. Left tackle is such a quality position, and the fact that he is so good at left guard means that if he could play tackle, they would have moved him over to tackle full time. Whether back in New England when he was there,
Which
or
one pays
here
more?
in Kansas City.
I think it's
Do
left
not-
tackle.
Who pays more? Which one pays more?
Left
It has to
tackle.
be left tackle.
Left tackle. Okay. So I was just curious. I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
you
was just
did.
wondering.
I don't know what your point was.
I really didn't know. I honestly didn't know.
No, left tackle. Left tackle's the highest paid position. It's left tackle and then right guard and then those inner pieces or on the lower end.
Yeah.
If he could play left tackle full time, they would have made him a left tackle in New England.
Who was their left tackle when he was in New England?
I'm
I'm
sure.
not for sure.
I couldn't tell you. Obviously not. I mean, when you're the best at or when he came here, right? Like he's played left tackle for what 2 quarters here in Kansas City.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I just
I'm
don't
just
think
saying
that
the
that's a real
option is
option.
there for a little
Yeah.
bit. Not saying full season, but if you need him in a pinch,
Yeah,
There you
he's
go.
the emergency left tackle.
yeah. Oh, for
I'm
sure.
just not. I don't want to go into the season that we expect him to come in and play left tackle the entire time. I don't think that's realistic, and I think that to me that's almost the equivalent of having Justin Reed be your kicker for the whole season. You should not. That should not be the plan. I think it would be irresponsible on the Chiefs to have him be the left tackle going into next year. I think it's a size thing. I think his arm length isn't there, and he would get blown up by some of these elite pass rushers because he's not big enough for the position.
That's fair. That's fair.
I
How do you
agree.
guys feel about Darian Kennard? I mean, the Chiefs drafted him this season, and he really hasn't done much. Do we think he may take a step in the right direction playing, or how do we feel about what we've seen with him so far?
Hold on one second. Reset. Yes, they went to Joe Thuney. I was talking about Prince. I don't know how it all got jacked up. All I said is that he's like a versatile player. He could play both sides. And then they went to the Thuney thing. Quentin was fighting about it, saying that he couldn't, play both
It
positions.
was a civil debate.
Yeah.
Debate.
Yeah, we aren't skipping
It was-
Shannon up
It
again.
was hate. It was just a hater vision moment. So, you just have to let that one go for a minute. But that's okay. We were talking about Prince because he can play both positions and he's very versatile. So that's why we were bringing up Joe because he can play both positions as well. But anyway, moving on. Go ahead. What would you say?
How do you guys feel about Darian Kennard out of Kentucky? Didn't
think-
do much this season.
I like
Do we think there may be a chance? I know JP's heard some things. Quinn, we'll start off with you. How do you feel about him?
I think that, look, we know that Andy Reid doesn't like to change the offensive line throughout the year, for better or for worse. So I think going into this offseason that, if you aren't sure that who can play your right tackle going in there or your left tackle, I think you should give anybody a chance, in camp or in these off-season programs. If you think that there's a guy that might be able to come in, if you think Kennard is a better version of your right tackle or left tackle, go ahead and put him at that position. I still think that you need to bring in a free agent or draft a guy, but if you have an opportunity to find your left tackle of the future or your right tackle of the future, go ahead and do it. There are some guys on this roster. We've talked Prince when he came in and played right tackle this year, he looked great. Now I think it was for literally like 5 quarters, but he looked good. So I'm okay with them putting anybody on this roster that has played right tackle or left tackle for their entire career. Go ahead and do it, because you're in a spot where you don't really know who's going to be playing those positions for the entire year. I think that Brown is gone, and while I do think they bring Wiley back, it'll be on a cheap deal. So if he gets outplayed by one of these younger guys, you have no problem with him coming back and being the backup.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I like Kennard. I've heard some things about him. I'm not really going to get into it too deeply, but I do like him, and I think he's got, how should I say this? He's got the opportunity to be a starter on this team. A lot of it's going to depend on how this camp plays out this year, but he's going to be fighting for that spot. And if they do bring Wiley back, we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think Kennard has a lot of agility. I think he's got a lot of he's got foot speed. He's got great lateral movement. I think he can play the position very well. It's just going to be a matter of, can he beat out who we bring in? And he's going to be able to pick it up quickly.
And that's the other thing, JP. Veach every single season has always brought in a offensive lineman, always a drafted one to kind of see how they're going to work out.
Yeah.
It's been many people over the years and kind of see what's going to happen there. And I think that's going to be interesting to see, will this guy exceed expectations or will he drop? Phillips says most important O-line ranking. Number 1's left tackle, 2 is right tackle, 3 is right guard, 4 is center, 5 is left guard, 6 is swing tackle.
Yeah, I think that. I think
pretty
that's
accurate.
good. You might want to move center up to that 3rd spot just because, he is the one touching the ball every down. But I think generally speaking, you're right. The reason the guards are less important is because you have the center there that can help either side of the guard. So if you have a bad guard or a mediocre guard going up against a top defensive tackle, it's much easier to double team a guy on the interior than on the exterior. So kind of unfortunately for Kansas City, it's the middle 3, the least important positions on the line is where they're on the top side of the NFL. I mean, Tooney and Humphrey are definitely within the top of their position. So then you've got Trey Smith, but you can make the argument that Trey Smith is one of the better right guards in the league. So
for sure,
the Chiefs are really, really good up in the middle of the line. It's those tackles that are a problem. And lucky for Kansas City, there are a lot of offense and defensive linemen coming out in this draft. We've talked about them. There are some really good guys. Ohio, both of their tackles coming out in this draft are going to go in the 1st round. So, there are a lot of tackles coming out in this draft, and Kansas City's going to end up with one of them. It's just going to come down to, are they going to be able to come together, work together, and be able to stop some of these elite pass rushers? Because it seems like every year these guys continue to get bigger, faster, and stronger.
Yeah, I agree. We'll just have to see how it plays out. I mean, we have a lot of options. We're not ruling out. First of all, everybody that's ruling out Orlando Brown shouldn't be, because it's not over yet. They're still trying to get that deal done, and I don't know if they're going to or not. I know they're working to get that deal done. That I know for a fact. But it's just going to be a matter of him being realistic and the Chiefs, kind of finding that middle ground with him. But he does have to be realistic. It's just part of it. If he wants to be on a championship team, he's got to be realistic to a degree. He's, again, probably top 8 in the NFL. And if you look at how they're paid, if anybody wants to go on any pay scale for the NFL in his position and look at it, there's a drastic difference between the top 3 and then, or actually really the top 4, I should say, and then 5 and below. The pay scale is so much different. So you have to really, he has to look at it from that perspective too. And I know that's what Veach is looking at. He's okay, well, you're good. You're actually really good. But you're not Trent good. You're just not. And Trent's 6 years older than you. And he's still playing at a higher level. So.
Yeah, Trent doesn't take 6 weeks to get going, like Brown had to both seasons he's been here. So with the thing about Brown, they're not getting a deal done before free agency starts. The only way that Trent comes back or Orlando Brown comes back here to Kansas City is that we're in the second week of free agency and the rest of the NFL is like, whatever you're asking for, this contract you're asking for does not exist in the NFL. And then I feel like if a team is asking relatively the same of what Kansas City does, he'll come back to Kansas City. The problem is that teams like the Falcons and the Bears have so much cap space and guys on rookie quarterback contracts where, they're willing to overpay for some players. And left tackle is the third or fourth most important position on a football field. Mm-hmm. So if you have to overpay for a position, at least you'd be overpaying for a premium position. And I just don't think that, Kansas City is going to win any of those bidding wars, which is why, once they came out and said that they're not applying the tag, in my head, I was like, he's no longer with Kansas City.
Oh, yeah. Normally when you hear a little bit of smoke, you already know a fire's been burning in the background for a while. So. I mean,
especially in Kansas City, because things don't come out of Kansas City, very often. We don't really get a lot of, ripplings of stuff. It's like the Tyreek Hill trade, right? It came out that, hey, Kansas City might be interested in trading Tyreek Hill. And then I think it was literally 90 minutes later, he was gone to Miami.
Yep. I saw that tweet, and I was like, yeah, there's a good chance, because when there's smoke, there's fire. And Willie said he got traded. But it worked out with all those picks, and we see everything's pretty much for the most part worked out there. Got no Super Bowl ring. We were happy. Saw all those different things. Real quick, before we kind of end it, I'm just kind of curious from you guys. If there is one Chiefs player from the early 2000 period you could add to this team right now, who would it be? If there is one player, offense, defense, it could be the special teams, not the water boy, but if any player, who would you add from this early 2000 period to be on the Chiefs now? No Willie contract issues. They would just join the team, and they'd be ready to go at a high level. We're going to start off first with JP. Who is that player?
Willie Roaf.
Willie Roaf. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. Why do you pick Willie Roaf?
Because I need an offensive lineman.
That's a good one. That's where he lied there.
I mean, that's a good reason, but no. I watched him play the game probably better than anybody I've ever seen play that position, ever. I knew him very well, and I still do, and it's not because I know him. It's because when you can see a man on a Tuesday or a Wednesday walking with a cane, and then on Sunday have the best game of his career, there was nobody that could compare to what he did on the O-line. I mean, he was just phenomenal in that era. I mean, he was great. He played 13 seasons, and he's paying for it now. But I tell you, he was great. Up until the last snap, he was great. He played like he was 25 all the time. That's the one thing I can say about him. No matter what kind of pain he was in, he played. And he played through it, and he played very well. So I would take Willie.
Who do you got, Quinn?
I mean, I would just say, Willie Rowe, Will Shields, that's arguably like the best offensive line in NFL history. Especially because of the era Yeah, that was there. I'm split. I'm gonna go with an offensive player. Let's have this conversation on Tuesday about the defense. So I'm gonna go with another offensive player. I think Tony Gonzalez is one that I want to go with just because he's my player grow up. The Chiefs jersey that I own is a Tony Gonzalez jersey. I have a signed Tony Gonzalez football. Tony Gonzalez is one of the reasons why I started watching football, outside of my father influencing me to watch football. But it was Tony Gonzalez that I was watching, and his dunk over the goalpost that eventually got banned. So I think I'm going to go with Priest Holmes, though. Priest Holmes had the most historic run of 38 games of any running back ever. He had a better 38-game run than LaDainian Tomlinson. He had a better game than literally any other running back in NFL history. So I'm going to go with Priest Holmes. I mean, you just watch I don't even want to just say the highlights. The stats that this dude was constantly putting up 150 plus yards and 2 touchdowns a game for 20 plus games. I mean, it's crazy the production he was putting up. He was the reason he made the early 2000s games fun. Part of that elite offense that underachieved because that defense was so bad. He was a part of the no punt game and against Peyton Manning's Colts. I mean, he's just so crazy athletic. His story alone, where he was a guy that in college, tore his knee, and Ricky Williams was able to take over his spot. And what's funny is that during a bowl game against, I want to say it was Texas, Ricky Williams was getting shut down. And so Priest Holmes had to go back in. And one of the commentators on that game, the color commentator, was none other than Dick Vermeil.
Wow.
And so that was the connection between Dick Vermeil and Priest Holmes, and why Priest Holmes ended up coming to Kansas City, because he was an undrafted free agent that got picked up by Baltimore. He wasn't a Chief to begin with.
And here's the funny part about that, Quentin. Quick, funny little side note on that. He was a backup running back with the Ravens. He wasn't even their starter. I mean, nobody even knew who he was when he was with Baltimore because they didn't play him. And then he comes to the Chiefs and becomes the Priest Holmes that everybody knows.
So yeah, I think that it's easy to go with Tony Gonzalez and some of those other elite players, but man, Priest Holmes is just something else. And I don't think we talk about Priest Holmes enough here in Kansas City. I think he gets mentioned in some of the advertisements and stuff every once in a while. Obviously, he's in the Ring of Honor, but man, Priest Holmes is just a beast. And I would love to have a Priest Holmes jersey just so I could wear that around Kansas City, because man, he's just such a guy. Talk about a football
person
player.
Off the field too.
I mean, the guy literally had 3 knee injuries and a neck injury, and was able to come back from all of them. And here's a trivia question later on. He has the most yards of any undrafted free agent running back in NFL history.
Yeah.
Wow.
He does.
That is ridiculous. That is crazy. Yeah. That is crazy. My player, I'm going to take the X Factor. Just imagine him.
I think we have the X Factor now with Kadarius Toney.
I'm talking about the OG X Factor. That's going to show Tony the way. And everyone's watching The Mandalorian. Dante Hall's going to go to Tony and say, "This is the way. Let's watch me." I mean, we saw only a surface level what Dante Hall was able to do as a punt returner and also as a wide receiver. But imagine him in this offense with Andy Reid. He would go to a higher level. I really believe players like a Tyreek Hill would not be Tyreek Hill without what we saw with what Andy Reid did. Same thing with Dante Hall. I feel like if he was in this offense, a lot of crazy things would happen. I mean, he was on the teams with the no punt game. He did a lot of different things. This guy was electric. Great punt returner. Great route runner. Could do a lot of different things. Just imagine to see his game plan, everything kind of work and blossom to what it is would be spectacular. Also, as Quentin and JP said, I honestly believe he also isn't as mentioned as much as he did. I mean, had a lot of crazy plays. I mean, I remember one my dad was telling me about where he duked those Broncos guys. They fell into each other. He ran around and threw up the X. I mean, he had the punt return against the Colts. I mean, he just had all these crazy plays, and just see what he was able to do week in and week out. Cool story. He actually was a part of NFL Europe. And I don't know if it was another team before, after year before year became the Chiefs. He worked out, did really, really well, went to the Rams and retired. So just kind of seeing everything we have seen there with Dante Hall, I think he would be phenomenal. And I think he would show Tony this is the way.
I got to tell you, it was funny during that Broncos game because he probably ran at least 50 yards behind the blockers before he broke free.
I would love to see like the Nets gen stats on that punt return.
It was insane.
I mean, he literally before he got 5 yards, positive yards, he was just juking out guys.
Oh.
Before we go, speaking of punt returners, it's funny. I wrote an article about a guy that I think Kansas City should draft. So, I think that Nico Romingo is a wide receiver out of Fresno.
Okay.
And he has a lot of those type of skills. You know, I wanted to find this guy, this sort of guy, because, you know, there was that report that came out, I think on Monday, that Kansas City wants Kadarius Toney to be the number one wide receiver. And there's one thing that Andy Reid doesn't do is he makes their number one receiver also their punt returner. Right? As soon as Tyreek Hill became the guy, he stopped returning punts. So if Kadarius Toney's going to become the guy, he's not going to return punts anymore. So I think that Nico Romingo out of Fresno State, check out the article. He returned 2 punts for a touchdown. They are crazy. He was used in the jet sweep motion. He does have some flaws, which is why I think he's going to slide in the drafts. I think Kansas City can pick him up with a later pick, one of their 5th, even 7th round picks. He's only 5'11" and weighs 183 pounds. His 40 time was right about NFL average. So his explosiveness on the field really comes from his ability to, move quickly. It doesn't come from his, acceleration. He does outrun guys. He has that sort of ability to run faster than the guy chasing him. Last season, he had 69 catches for 768 yards, right? So the production is there. He is used in some of those jet sweep motions, and his punt returning, he's smart about it. There are plenty of times he calls for fair catches. He's not an idiot, where he feels like he can take it back every time. He makes good, smart football moves. So check out the article. Check out Nico Romingo, which is a fun name to say. And I think that Kansas City can pick him up later in the draft.
Quick question for you, Quinn. How is his route running ability? Is it pretty good or is it average?
Well, the fact he comes from Fresno, he's got a limited route running tree, right?
Okay.
They don't run like an NFL offense there.
Mm-hmm.
They are limited in his turn. That's actually one of the flaws I have inside of his thing is that simply the amount of different routes that he runs are just not there. He runs a lot of post routes, corner routes, that sort of thing. He does go over the middle of the field. So there is that, and he would be used like that in this offense too if he gets a chance to play this game. So I think he'd be a good slot receiver here in Kansas City, but mostly it'd be that punt return and have him develop into more of a wide receiver. But I do think that, this is a guy that Kansas City could look into 5th, 6th, 7th round, especially with these extra comp picks. I'd be totally fine with Kansas City throwing one of those compensatory picks his direction because there is a benefit to having a guy like that on your roster with Kadarius Toney becoming more of a, wide receiver and not this gimmick guy. Have this guy be your new gimmick guy.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad.
So before we go, we got to answer some of these questions because we can't leave people hanging. What are your thoughts? Now, I told Will we would answer these. What are your thoughts on the Derrick Henry trade rumors? Look, man, I mean, it's getting to that point now to where they're going to have to make some cap space. And I think they're trying to figure out, I think they're realizing that they can't rely on him. Their game isn't going to rely specifically on Derrick Henry like it has in the past. It's failed them, actually. So they're going to have to make some moves. And I think he might be one of those guys that is just a move that they have to make. I don't think they're not rumors. I think it's true. I think they are going to consider trading him. And I was kind of wondering when that was coming, to be honest with you. I thought about it last year, and I thought, I wonder what year or what day is going to come that they're going to say, okay, we need to we need to change things up a little bit. And it looks like this might be the time. And there's going to be a lot of teams out there that are going to pine after him. So this might be the opportunity where he gets traded to a team. What do you guys think?
Sorry, you can continue, JP.
I'm done.
Oh, okay.
I just said, what do you guys think?
I think this shows that the Titans are rebuilding, right? They're sort of throwing in the towel. They know that with their quarterback and their situation that they're not going to be a contender for a Super Bowl. The Titans are sort of putting up the white flag, if you will, if they trade Derrick Henry. I hope he doesn't go to Buffalo, but that seems to be a damn good fit there up in Buffalo because they know that they can't continue to run Josh Allen the way they have, and he seems to fit there. So this is just to show that the Titans are done and they're no longer a threat in the AFC. Jacksonville's going to run over that division unless somehow the Colts get a quarterback that, comes shooting out of the gate, running out of the gate, and the Titans are going to be third or possibly fourth in that division if Houston gets a quarterback that, they're going to be able to produce. So Tennessee's going on the back burner in the AFC South, which is crazy because, 3 years ago, there were plenty of conversations about them being, one of the teams that Kansas City was going to have to contend with. But as we've seen over the past 5 years, it's been Baltimore and Kansas City and Tennessee and Kansas City, Buffalo and Kansas City, the Bengals. Now it's the Bengals in Kansas City. So there's been one constant.
Yeah.
The Chiefs. I feel like, he's gone. It's ultimately, like Quentin said, the white flag. It's just they're at a point where they can't do anything, and I think he wants to try to win at the next level with a contender. Now, I believe his hit and everything cap-wise is not as bad, so a team who requires him is going to be in a good spot. Now it's going to be interesting where he could go. I don't think it's possible he could be traded with an AFC. It could be more of an NFC team. But at this point, with trades happening between division rivals and teams and conferences, nothing would surprise me there. So that's ultimately at the end of the day, regardless, the Chiefs will probably have to run into him anyway because he will be going to a contender. That's how I feel personally. So
I agree. Derek's now 28, I believe.
Yeah, I think he turns 29 during the season.
Yeah. So, it's getting to that point. Look, the guy is phenomenally built and can run like none other. But they pulled the Christian Okoye on him. They ran him into the ground for a long time. And I don't know if he's slowing down. I haven't seen that so far. But he did finally have an injury. It took forever for him to have an injury, but he had one. I just feel like, again, they know that they can't lean on him like they have in the past, and they're going to have to rebuild, and they're just in a really crappy situation. So it's just time to move on from him.
Yep, that's true.
Let's see, I think there was a couple other questions. Let me see. I'm going to make sure I don't miss anybody.
Reset asked about Thornhill.
Oh, okay,
Thornhill, yeah.
I just think that I don't think Thornhill is coming back. I think that you've got so many other guys that you need to pay, and Brian Cook is able to step up in the spot. I think that's why, when we're doing our mock drafts or guys that Chiefs can potentially draft, we're looking into safeties because you're already paying Justin Reed. You can't pay two safeties. You're paying your quarterback $50 million a year, so you can't afford to pay everybody. So I think Thornhill's a free agent. He'll get a nice contract somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. They're at the point where they can't pay everyone. They're just going to have to let people go, and they'll bring people in. That's why we see them drafting was a year early. So
yeah,
I agree with you there.
I agree. Thornhill, there's a slight chance he comes back, but if I had to put a number on it, I would say it's probably a 10% chance he does come back. It's going to have to be on a really team-friendly deal. And with the way Veach drafts and with all the other players who are hitting the market right now, I just don't see it happening. They have to. He said, why don't you guys host spaces on Twitter? We try, and every time we do, there's some girl on there letting everybody scream and holler continually, and we can't deal with that headache. I think she's some Ravens person. But anyway, I think you can't leave it all on Williams, but you also have to have a quality backup. We're going to have to draft somebody if we're not going to bring him back. Kind of is what it is. Oh, really quick. It was brought up about Aaron Rodgers today on the presser with Mike Tannenbaum, and they believe he's gone from Green Bay. They believe that it's mutual on both sides. No longer wants to be there. They don't want him there. It'd be interesting to see where he ends up at. When asked about the Jets, they weren't as positive about the Jets as everybody else was. I think even Quentin thought maybe the Jets would be a good spot for him. I did too. I don't think he wanted to go to the Jets.
Follow Brett Favre, baby.
He didn't want to follow that Brett Favre train, but they brought up other teams that he would be good with. So it looks like they are parting ways for sure. And these guys are, if anybody knows who Tannenbaum is, he's pretty high up in the food chain when it comes to the NFL. So he was pretty much said he's gone. So there will be no more Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. So for everybody that wanted to know that, if you did want to know, that's what's happening. They feel like he has a lot of life left in him, a good 3 or 4 or 5 years left in him. I do too. I think he's got he's still got all of his legs, still got his arm, still take a hit. It really depends on what he wants to do, but he definitely wants out of there. And they apparently don't want him there. And they brought up his contract and they said, basically it was kind of weird. They kind of said what I said. You could take that $50 million and stretch it out and do what you want with it. If he goes somewhere that he can actually be a contender or be on a contending team and help them win, get close to a Super Bowl, even get in one in the next 3 or 4 years, why not, let him go? And it was kind of crazy that they brought it up. One of the other guys asked about it today in the presser, and that was brought up. And I was curious to hear what they had to say, and I'm glad it was brought up because I really wanted to know if what I heard was true, actually true, and it seems to be true.
Well, I agree with you there. It'll be interesting to kind of see where he's going to go. So lots going to happen.
The only 4 teams I can think of is the Jets seems to be the number 1 option. And then the only other 3 I can think of that are even slight possibilities would be the Raiders.
The Raiders were brought up.
Washington and Baltimore. If Baltimore isn't able to get back Lamar. Those are the only teams I can think of.
Here's what they said. They did say Baltimore might be an option depending on how it's structured and if they bring players in that will accommodate him. He does not want to go to a team that has no wide receivers. And that's the one thing that he's concerned with is he said he doesn't want to go to a rebuild team, and Green Bay's absolutely rebuilding. The Raiders are rebuilding. They franchise tag Jacobs. That's what they did. That's all they've done. So it's going to have to be a team that's not really in so much of a rebuild mode, or a team that is going to bring in players that are going to accommodate him and make him a better player.
Jets, Jets.
Jets.
I don't know. We'll see. I just don't know if he would be that guy he doesn't want to follow in Brett's footsteps. He just doesn't want to do it. And he doesn't want to go out in the fashion that Brett Favre went out.
So as long as you don't go to the Vikings, you should be fine.
Yeah, I agree there. So.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Miami was brought up in that conversation with Aaron Rodgers, by the way, by those guys. They said Miami would be a good fit for him. Even though they say they're stuck on Tua, they did say Miami would be a good fit for him. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But sounds like he's definitely not going to be there any longer. So
No, it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen there. Well, we're going to wrap up our show with the last segment. Quentin, our favorite segment is what were you thinking? It's a segment where we find a terrible sports take, we read it out, we discuss it, and we end the show. Quentin, what take did you find on this wonderful Thursday? What take did you find?
I found a take that hold on. Oh, this is real professional here. I found a take that the Buccaneers should essentially go all out and try and win the AFC South. Now, it seems like it was just a fan that just posted just a bunch of free agents that they should go after. Like the Buccaneers should go after guys like Orlando Brown Jr. And it's just a fat list of free agents. And my first thought was there's no way you're going to be able to afford all these guys. And the second off is I think that you're delusional if you think that Buccaneers are going to be any sort of willing to be reasonably productive moving forward. I know the NFC South is a hot bag of garbage, but I just don't think that the Buccaneers realistically have any chance of being contenders or playoff available moving forward. So I think that they're just stuck in this, we won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, so we're good now.
I agree with you there. It's kind of like come on, man, really? The Buccaneers? They don't got Tom Brady. They're losing everybody. Players going to be gone.
Yeah,
There's no way. The Saints are going to rule that division now once again. They had the party for 3 years where they really do what they wanted to do. That's not happening no more. Saints are there. The Buccaneers, I'm sorry, but you guys are going back to the depths of the basement of the NFC. That's just kind of how the way things are. It will be crazy if they somehow turn around, win the division, and make it to another Super Bowl. If they do that.
They're one of the oldest teams in the NFL. So
exactly.
So you have no youth there to sort of rebuild. It's one thing if you're like the Bears where you really are in that mode of like we've got draft assets and where we've got young guys, we have our quarterback, we're like the future is bright in a place like Chicago. The Bucs haven't even admitted from a franchise level that they're rebuilding. So I just don't understand how you could convince yourself that we're a franchise that has a bright future because you've got nothing.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I like that one. I still think the one you brought up earlier from Vanderdam was pretty good too. We'll have to use that on the next episode because that was basically, I mean, how do you put those two things in the same sentence? It just doesn't make sense. But again, a lot of what comes out of that little group there of people doesn't make sense. So we'll have to. We'll keep finding these hot takes, these crap takes, and we'll get a list going, and maybe
we'll get some music too.
We'll get some music, and we're gonna have a little. Maybe we'll have a winner and loser of the worst.
To revisit them, maybe.
Yeah, to revisit them.
Okay.
And then each week we'll have the worst take is the winner, and we'll have 3. And we'll find all 3 of those on Twitter, and we'll put them up, have a little video segment, give them a little award for being stupid, and then we'll move on. That'll be fun to do. With that being said, Caleb, take it away.
Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning into our live show. Quentin, JP, thanks for coming on again. We do appreciate it. We will be doing our live shows Tuesday, Wednesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, also on Sundays, possibly as well. If you guys have any questions, please DM us. I'm not forgetting anything, JP, but just want to give a shout out to you guys specifically, pushing really hard. JP's doing a lot behind the scenes. Quentin's been riding like a madman. Philip has been doing a lot of crazy stuff when it comes to draft. So has Quentin.
And writing like a madman.
I want to say thank you to the team.
We got 2 weeks for baseball, and then it's 162.
Yeah,
exactly.
To win 71 games.
Exactly. There we go. So we're in a great time.
Also, real quick, anybody that's listening, every week we're setting a time now, and we're gonna put it out there. Tuesday through Thursday at 6 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Central Time. On Wednesdays, the show is on the other YouTube channel. I'm sorry, I'm a little out of it right now. Let me give you the name really quick because I have it in my phone. I'm a little bit out of it, so I'm trying to, with all this cold medicine I'm on, it's been a rough ride. Let me think here really quick. I'll give it to you really quick.
Nothing like dead air time on a podcast.
Sorry about that, dead air. It's Fantasy Sports Corporation, and it's basically TSS Fantasy as well. So if you look at that, you'll find our show every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific time, and it's 9 p.m. Eastern time. So every week it will be at 6 o'clock on those 3 days. And then on Sundays, we haven't yet to set a time for that one yet. As far as Reset is concerned, we will try to do more spaces on Twitter. It seems like every time we go to do one, there's 60,000 people that are trying to do them, and it just clouds up the whole Twitter sphere, and it kicks us off. And most of the time, it's usually people that have like 12 people listening, and everybody's screaming at each other at the same time, and there's really no structure to it whatsoever. So it makes it difficult for us when we're trying to do one, because it'll kick us off. So if you guys want us to do spaces, we will do them. We'll actually try to schedule them in advance. That way you know they're coming. And then we'll go from there. Okay, cool. Caleb, that's it for me.
But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Peace out, everybody.